Girls of Reddit, what is the creepiest thing a man has said to you in public? I was waiting for an Uber home from a theater in Boston after rehearsal one night. It was after 11 p.m. This black car that matches the make and model on the app rolls up, stops by the curb, and rolls down the window. Guy inside asks if I'm waiting for Uber. I say yes and ask his name to see if it matches. He says, "I'm Uber, get in." At this point, I'm creeped out, alone on a street corner close to midnight. I refuse, and he says, "I'll give you $300 if you get in this car right now, we're going to a party." At that point, I turned around and booked it back into the theater. Absolutely not getting kidnapped today, folks. Check your plates before you take your Ubers. That's a, bold strategy for sure. That second line basically admits, okay, I'm not your Uber, but I'm here to take you to a party for wait, I give you $300? I don't get it, man. I can't imagine that has ever worked out for him, nor should it ever. What an absolute weirdo.
We now have a Discord. Check out the server in the link in the description.
Story 2. I was super drunk out with friends. We were at a karaoke bar and I had way too many drinks, probably an attempt to sing better. Anyway, went outside to puke in a trash can out front because the line for the bathroom was so long. After I puked, I just sat there for a minute in the fresh air. A car pulls up, rolls down their window and says, "Is this your Uber?" I was not so drunk that I couldn't remember if I called an Uber, so I said no, thinking this dude must be just confused, so I decided to go back inside. Anyway, next morning my friend texted me that someone went missing that night from that exact area. Freaked me out when I remembered. Story 3. I called an Uber one night from school. Mine was at like 9 p.m. Dude pulled up all good and stuff, but as he starts driving forward, he tells me, "I'm actually about to run out of gasoline. Mind if we stop for gas?" Okay, first of all, what the hell? I was not about to, 1, risk getting stuck in the middle of nowhere in Texas with a stranger, or 2, go to a gas station empty at night in Texas with a stranger. Houston has the highest intimate trafficking rates in the US as far as I know, so that was a huge frickin' nope. Even if he was just a normal guy and genuinely was just running out of gas, why would you accept the ride? I told him, "No, I'll get off here and you can go get gas yourself. Cancel the ride so I don't have to pay the fee." And I walked that short strip back to the school before calling another Uber. Edit. Okay, let me add some context here so people can understand better why I don't think this was an overreaction, please. I didn't yell at the guy, I was completely non-confrontational. Told him I would rather call another Uber and that he should be able to find a gas station on Google Maps. Then got off. I don't have parents waiting at home to make sure I get home on time. Occasionally, I don't see the relatives who I live with for days at a time. They would not notice if I went missing. I look like a 14-year-old girl. I probably fight like one too. Houston has the most active trafficking in the whole frickin' nation, and my district specifically has really high rates. They gave us a presentation on this last year so we could be cautious. Y'all for real telling me I'm wrong to play it safe and just call another Uber? Uberman might have been an honest man, but I wasn't about to take that chance. He could have gotten gas beforehand or just canceled the ride. I can't believe people are telling OP that they overreacted. When it comes to personal safety, they're allowed to do whatever they want, and it didn't really impact the guy either. It's his own dang fault for not getting gas before he picked a customer up. That's just true, no matter which way you slice it. Story 4. Had an older man ask me to stir his mixed drink with my finger to make it sweeter. This was at a fancy-ish dinner party my family attended. I was 13. This guy was around 50. He went on to make a joke about me eating a sucker later on. Something about blowing pop. Still makes me nauseous after 20 years. Story 5. I was young, probably like 19. I went into a gas station to pay and the clerk said to me, "Look at you dressed like a little tramp." I was in a skirt and shirt. I was really shocked. And I was the only one in the store too. When I didn't say anything back, he said, "You get off turning men on, don't you?" I got so scared. I also lacked the confidence back then to shut it down. Thank God someone else walked in and the clerk gave me back my change and I went on my way. Oh, and once when I was a teen, I was waiting for my mom at a store. I decided to swing my bare feet out the window and lay back and nap. All of a sudden, I felt someone tickling my feet. It was an old man. So creepy. Story 6. I was chillin' with this dude at a party-ish thing while deployed once. I had mentioned a few times that I had a girlfriend back home, and he seemed cool and we had a lot in common. So we were fast buddies. Until about 4 a.m. or so, when we were all sitting by a fire and he asked if he could hug me. Drunkenly, I was like, okay, whatever. But then he asked if he could kiss me. And I was like, nah, dude, I have a girlfriend. I'm gay as hell. You know that, haha. And his face went real cold. And he said, "Until I catch you walking back to your dorm alone later." I honestly could have cried. I was so scared. Thank God a group of dudes I recognized walked past a few minutes later to go get early morning French toast at the chow hall. So I tagged along as fast as I could. Never saw the dude again. Story 7. I was wearing a Marshall Lee the Vampire King shirt. One old dude told me that he liked my shirt. I said thanks. He then says he likes it because it makes him think about me biting him. I was shocked. I said nothing. Luckily, my friend clapped back, was like, yo, screw off, bro. Your wife doesn't even want to bite you. Glad I had someone there with me. These creeps, I always hear about them, and I just can't believe it. Like, obviously, there's part of me that's like, oh, you're embellishing. That can't be possibly true. But it's like, no, these things happen, and it's nuts. Some people are they're just so weird. And potentially at least a little dangerous, too. Story 8. Had a 65-plus-year-old coworker who was simply disgusting. Poor hygiene, raggedy, greasy beard. Told me he had a blue pill in his lunchbox and that he would pay for a room after work so I could ride him all evening. I told him, no thanks. Went immediately and told our supervisor, who literally laughed and said, well, you know he didn't mean it. You're not even hot. Well, this one was a 1-2 punch, huh? That first part, I'm like, oh, okay, surely the story is done. Then went to the supervisor and, ooh, it gets worse. Story 9. I was in Paris at a Christmas market, and a guy came up to me and told me I was very beautiful. Before I could say anything back, he said, you know, I've been following you for a while and saw your friends walk away from you. I could kidnap you so quick they would never see you again. Then he laughs. And my friend, who was only like 8 feet away, heard this exchange and pulls my arm and we start fast walking away. We cut down so many alleys, popped in and out of shops, and got on different trains since it was nearly impossible to know if he was still following us. Story 10. I was walking down the street toward a bar to meet some friends one night. A man drove by me once and then turned his car around and drove ahead of me and parked up the street. He walked toward me on the sidewalk and then when he reached me, turned completely around to walk beside me. At first, he tried to be friendly and suggestive. When I wouldn't respond and tried to walk faster to get to the bar, he told me he was going to put me in his car and take me to a special place. I started to run around a corner. He ducked behind the building there and cut me off ahead. I ran full speed across a busy street to the nearest CVS, which was open 24 hours, and called my boyfriend, who sped over to pick me up. When we walked outside, the man was waiting by the exit with his front and rear car doors open, like he was waiting to force me into his back seat. Edit. To people asking/commenting about calling the police, yes, I totally agree that I should have done that, but I can't really describe how little rational thought went into my reaction. I also think that unfortunately a lot of women fall victim to the pressure to not make a scene. That societal voice in your head that tells you maybe you're just being paranoid or overreacting, that tells you not to be that girl, it's powerful and dangerous. I knew full well this man was trying to harm me, and I still didn't want to sound crazy or not be believed. For any women reading this, next time you feel threatened, do not be me. Look crazy. Make a scene. Scream in public and call the cops. To the people asking what my husband, then boyfriend, did when I called, I wasn't especially coherent about what had happened, just that I was being followed and needed help. He came from the bar where he was drinking and got me out, and I'm quite glad he didn't know the details at the time and he didn't try to fight the guy. My husband is a large, strong man trained in boxing. He is also Latino. Leaving aside the fact that the guy could have had a gun or a knife, the police have guns and are not known to respond well to large, possibly intoxicated Latino men starting fights in parking lots. I gotta tell you, I was really confused why OP brought up the fact that he was Latino. It got there in the end, but I was like, okay, sure. Seriously though, this is scary. The fact that a guy is so overtly just trying to kidnap her, essentially. Or I guess abduct because not a kid. Either way, trying to take her away to a place she didn't want to be, and that's awful. Story 11. I was walking about 2 miles from my class to the place where I can park my car for free. It was warm and it's a nice walking trail through a park for most of it. I'd get a lot of cat calls on the path, but I just kept my head down and ignored them. But I was always very alert. One day walking back, there was a guy way ahead of me. I don't know how I knew or what tipped me off, but immediately I was like, this guy is about to be a problem. We kept walking towards each other, and when we're about 5 feet apart, he stops and stares at me as I walk by. A few feet past that, I glance over my shoulder, and he's now following me. I speed up, he speeds up. I'm practically running as we get to the area where shops are, and I go into a Starbucks all the way to the back, and I can see him through the back door. I called my mom sobbing, and I was like, I'm just gonna wait for him to leave. And then he didn't for 20 minutes. So I went to the manager and said, that man outside followed me here and I'm afraid to leave. The manager went outside and told him to scram, and he just said, this is a public sidewalk and I just want to talk to that beautiful lady. So the manager called the cops and he ran away. They drove me back to my car, and I never parked in the free lot again. Story 12. A guy asked me what cup size they were. I've also been asked how much by random assortments of men driving while I was walking to work in work clothes, which was a t-shirt and blue jeans, by the way, because it was a retail store. I also got told by a very boisterous gentleman in a Land Rover, "Baby, that butt is black man approved." And when I looked around thinking someone else had to be on the street, I heard, "No, baby, I'm talking about you." I actually laughed at that one though, so I don't know if it counts. Story 13. I was in 6th grade and had 3 boys discuss my breasts in front of me like I wasn't there. The first boy said I stuffed my bra. A second one came up and explained to him how he could know that I didn't. The third joined in during the explanation of real versus fake like they were looking at a painting on a wall, while I sat there flabbergasted at being noticed in that way. Another time I was 17 and cleaning a window at work on one knee. Guy, in front of his 8-year-old son, "You like being on your knees?" It happens a lot more the younger women are. Creepy guys know that the older we are, the less likely we are to stand for it. So if you're young, who gives a crap about being polite? Give them a curled lip, raised eyebrow, and a well-placed ew, and watch their faces fall. How does that man have a kid? I don't understand. It's just an insane, blatant disrespect for people in general. And yet here you are with a kid who is definitely going to grow up to be something like you. What a horrifying thought. Story 14. At work. Was taking my sweater off because it was too hot in the office. By the time I'd hung my sweater over the back of my chair, a colleague, middle-aged, I'm 26, whom I'd only seen a few times before and had only said good morning to so far, was standing next to my desk and said, "I'll just wait here to see if she continues." He was talking to my mentor, but looking at me. When I, shocked, said, "Excuse me?" He said, "You're not going to continue?" Me, incredulous at that point, "No." Him, smiling, "That's too bad." After watching him exchange smiles with my mentor, I politely told him that was very inappropriate, and I would appreciate him not saying anything like that again. He said he wouldn't, but that small smile was still on his face, like he didn't take it seriously. The creepiest thing about it was how unfazed both him and my mentor seemed by the whole interaction. Story 15. I was a part of a Christian theater group when I was 11. My mom put me in it to make more friends. My first day of rehearsal, one of the male instructors, probably about 25-30, came up to me and told me I needed to go home and change, because my pants were distracting. Guess what pants I was wearing? Regular old black leggings that went down to my ankles. He only said it to me and not any other girl because I've always had a rather curvy figure. I ran out crying because I felt so embarrassed. My mom was furious, and I never went back there again. Story 16. I worked at a truck stop and needed a driver to sign something, but he didn't have a pen. He was a super gross old fat guy, missing quite a lot of teeth. He said that I could borrow his pen, but then I would have to get into his truck with him. He was going to lock the doors and I wasn't allowed to get out. I recoiled in horror as he gave me the most disturbing smile. The thought of assaulting me and telling me about the fantasy truly made his day. Story 17. Oh boy, where to start? I should just assault you right now. You couldn't stop me. I better stop flirting with you or my wife will get mad. Who was present, by the way. Do you live alone? Also just in general questions asking me if I'm alone. Also any statements along the lines of, "Oh, you shouldn't be out alone, you're too pretty. Someone will snatch you up." In a grocery store, random old dude, I was 15, asked if $500 would convince me to sleep with him. Stranger at a store also started a conversation with me. I was 16 and the cashier, asking me about school, then turned the subject to asking if I was a naughty schoolgirl, and he said he was sure I had many of the male teachers after me. A friend of mine noticed me freaking out and came over and told the guy to leave me alone. What's the end game with something like that last one? Like, what's the idea? Is this guy just expecting her to say, "Oh, yeah, I am, you want to find out?" and then go to prison? I don't get it. Story 18. I've always wanted to be inside of a redhead. The obvious intimate implications aside, he could also have meant he wanted to murder me and burrow inside my skin. Either way, 0 out of 10, would not recommend. I was also working and unable to react, and it took me minutes to even process what he said because I was in customer service mode just nodding along. I'm sort of surprised I didn't respond with a neat or wow, that's crazy in a monotone. Story 19. Old man said he was a new adult film director in our small town, and he asked me if I would be in one of his films. I was 17 at the time. He then told me his entire name and full address. called my job every day to find out when I was there, and always asked about my rubber recommendations. Either that guy or the time I was walking down the street in midday in full view of a busy outdoor bar, and a guy pulled his huge SUV over and tried grabbing me to pull me into his car in front of everyone. I ran for my life and he actually chased me on foot for 3 blocks before giving up. No one helped me. Thank God I'm fast. OP, I am so sorry you went through that last one. That actually sounds straight out of a nightmare. That must have been a horrifying position to be in, and if I ever see someone running from someone, I will try to help, I promise. Bystander effect it really hits sometimes. Story 20. I'm Chinese. This old guy next to me at a wine bar started a conversation and told me how he used to be stationed in Korea and how much they loved him there. Then proceeded to ask if I liked to kiss. I tried to play cool by saying, "You mean the band? I guess they're okay." I was giving him an out, but he barreled ahead and clarified, plus repeated himself. Asked for the check and paid so fast I knocked the bar stool over. It really sucked because I was a regular there and saw him a few more times after that. I wasn't alone, thankfully. I just pretended to not notice or remember him. Story 21. At my sister's wedding, the photographer approached me at the head table. He leaned in and said, "How old are you?" 14, I replied. Dang, I was hoping you were at least 17. He then winked at me and walked away. He was at least 40. The people sitting to my right and left both agreed that it was creepy as hell. The fact that he said it in front of others made it super weird. And the fact that he was still hoping I was underaged. Just not as underaged as I was. It was all super disgusting. Maybe, just maybe, he was asking for a friend. Ugh. Story 22. For background, I'm a dwarf. I was 18 at the time and out in town clubbing. A group of middle-aged men yelled out, "You wouldn't even need to get on your knees." It was disgusting, but even more so because they were all old enough to be my father and all wearing wedding rings. They thought it was hilarious and followed me down the road while laughing for a few minutes. I stopped going out clubbing after that. How people like this get married, I will never know. Absolutely disgusting behavior. I'm sorry, OP. Story 23. I got a text message after a date once that he should have assaulted me when he had the chance. Was a Russian guy that hid his atrocious teeth on his POF profile. I could think of some bad stuff, but most of it was straight up assault. But the things my mom's boyfriend would say out loud in front of people when I was a teen was pretty atrocious. When I was 12 and my sister had just died, we visited family out of state and my cousin was taking care of me. My dad, my mom, and her boyfriend all came to get me and take me back to hell. My cousin thought we should go to the indoor water park. He was standing around my cousin and some other family, and he just laughed at me crying in the hot tub and said something along the lines of, "She's pleasuring herself on the jets." My cousin was very alarmed about this and told my mom to get rid of him because if he wasn't already, he was going to hurt me. She wasn't wrong. I don't want to think of any more isolated incidents. I'll end up staying up all night. Story 24. When I worked at a fast food place with a drive-thru in high school, at age 17 I had a late middle-aged man tell me he wouldn't pay for his food until I let him see that butt, because he bets it's real firm and round. The words juicy, smooth, and sweetheart came up too. My manager had to come threaten to call the police on him after about 5 minutes of him refusing to pay. I was so scared and shocked, I just kept saying, "No, that'll be $2.96, please," and "Sir, I'm a minor, please stop." I had never experienced pure predatory creeping like that and thankfully haven't since. Story 25. I'm a guy, but I have long hair and didn't quite have a masculine figure in high school, so I could be mistaken from behind. Anyway, I was working at Bulk Barn scooping almonds into a bucket and had my hair tied up in a ponytail so my piercings were visible too. Anyway, a greasy dude comes up from behind me and puts a hand on the small of my back, and he whispers, "What's your favorite kind of nut?" very suggestively. I turned around and in a deep voice responded, "Smoked almond, thanks for asking." He responded to that with, "Oh crap, you're a guy," and promptly left to hit on the cashier instead.